So the first comment that caught my eye was this one here. It says South Carolina Gamecocks' problem all season has been their offense, not their defense. They have a great defense, but the offense has been the problem. Um, I agree. So last week, into the Texas game, I went on a rant about how I felt that the guards had not been playing up to the level that we've accustomed to seeing them play, whether it's MiLaysia, whether it was Raven, whether it was Ta'Niya, Tessa. I posted that clip on TikTok and on Instagram. I had a bunch of South Carolina fans after the game flooding my mentions, telling me that I'm not a real fan and I'm all these other things. What's funny about that is I actually saw a clip of Gino talking about UConn. And one of the things it was like he was talking about the way he coaches. And what he said is he expects his players every time in practice to play up here in practice. And the reason why is because if you play up here consistently in practice, there might be a drop off in the game, but the drop off would still be considerably high than if you're practicing down here. So when I go on rants and I say that I need to see more from MiLaysia, I need to see more from Raven, I need to see more from Ta'Niya and Tessa and whatever, it's not because I don't have confidence in the team. It's because what we can't do is skate on by with 11 points from Chloe Kitts one night and then 23 points from Bree Hall one night and then 22 from MiLaysia Fulwiley another night and just a bunch of offensive inconsistency and expect to go up into a game against a team like UConn and expect to win. I'm talking about dominate because I acknowledge on the show, I did not expect this team to dominate this season at all. I expect them to look a lot better than they did in the tournament. So how do you think, Martin, South Carolina will be able to bounce back heading into next season? They always figure out a way to do it, obviously. It's why they're one of the most successful programs of the last couple seasons. But how do you think they will bounce back to hopefully get back to this place next year?
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to see what Raven is doing because now apparently she's up in the air about what she's doing coming back or going to the draft. So that's gonna impact things. They lose Sanaya, they lose Bree Hall. I did see Dawn after the game commenting on people were asking her about the transfer portal and what might she be doing to retool the roster. And she's going to give politically correct answers, of course, but she mentioned experience. Well, she mentioned experience and she said young guard. So, I mean, I think they're going to be in that portal for sure. They've been to the Final Four 5 straight years.
Yep.
3 out of those 5 years, they were in the national championship game. I mean, how they bounce back, we will see based on, again, what the roster is looking like. I look forward to seeing that. I don't think Dawn is going to be, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how they might pivot, change a little bit, tweak, whatever. But when you've been to the Final Four 5 straight years, what you're doing is working. And you've bounced back, so to speak, every time. And again, 3 out of the 5, they were in the national championship and they obviously won those 3. So I mean, I do think, like, and I know there was a lot of talk about the parity in women's college basketball this year, which there was, even though we still ended up with a 1 seed versus a 2 seed. You know, we've still had no less than a 3 seed win the national title. So it's still about the elite programs. But I do think we're going into even more of an era of parity with the portal and with players moving around and just the talent getting better. The number 1 player in the country, Aaliyah Chavez, signed to Oklahoma, not UConn or South Carolina or LSU or Baylor or UCLA. She's going to Oklahoma. So like the allegiances are changing, are shifting. Everyone's not just going to the 1 school or to the 2 schools. So I think parity is going to open up a little bit more. But I mean, look, they're going to have you have MiLaysia and Joyce Edwards now going forward as your duo. I expect MiLaysia to now get off the bench and be a starter from here on out. That needs to happen. That's part of the process, I think. Make her a starter, Dawn. It's time. And her and Joyce are going to be the cornerstones going forward. I fully expect them to retool. You know, not to say you can replace a Bree Hall, but I know they can find another 3-and-D wing. I know they'll find a more good, productive post players. So I think, I mean, I think they'll bounce back like they usually do. They're going to be right back. They'll be a top 5 team next year. I mean, how they do it will be dependent on what their roster's looking like.
So I think it's time we need to. I never want to sound like I'm questioning the great Dawn Staley.
Mm-hmm.
It's time the system changes. I think it's time. I really do. I think it's time the system changes. You and I said this a couple months ago. Camila Cardoso's not here anymore. Like, we don't have the 6'7". We don't have the 6'7" size advantage. We do have, I think, the tallest player on the roster right now is Adele Tack. She's 6'5". We didn't see a lot from Adele this season. I mean, she's coming off the bench. I think she played in 20 some odd games. You know, if you want to compare that to like other bigs that we've had, Camilla, Aaliyah, Asia, whatever, their freshman years are a little bit more impactful than that. So like, I can't imagine, unless there's just a massive amount of growth between now and the beginning of next season, I can't possibly imagine that the game plan going into next season is to maintain the same feed the post, have the size advantage, and play through Adele. I can't imagine, especially not when you have a player as box office and as talented as MiLaysia Fulwiley on the roster. Like, I fully expect there to be a shift in the way that South Carolina plays basketball. I think that's the only way. I think that's the only way that they bounce back. Now, you have gone on me several times over the course of the show, whether it's with South Carolina, whether it's with Vegas, about me being incessantly hard on my favorite players and my favorite teams, right? And so it's very hard, and it seemed very what's the word? Like I'm crying over spilled milk at the fact that my favorite women's college basketball team, who has been to 5 straight Final Fours and been in 3 of those national championships and won 2 of them, it seems like I'm crying over spilled milk at the idea that we lost a national championship game. No, it's not working anymore. Like, unless you have that, Lauren Betts, like if we had Lauren Betts, we probably would have won the national championship because it would have worked, right? We don't have that. So there needs to be a change. And when you have a player in MiLaysia Fulwiley who can score, you have to surround a team around her that is going to play to her strengths. You have to surround her with players who can shoot the basketball. You have to surround her with, wings and forwards and bigs who can run the floor in transition, who can, go out there and be effective, because that she likes to push the pace and run the floor. And that's usually when she's at her best with all the, I call her showtime when we're talking back and forth, because that's what it is. It's showtime when she's out, open floor, nothing but the net in front of her. That that's what we're getting. There has to be a shift. I have seen people talk about the prospect of Ta'Niya Latson, who's in the transfer portal currently coming to South Carolina. There is the Raven Johnson connection. Raven Johnson did say after the game that she has made a decision one way or another about whether she's coming back or whether she's going to the draft.
And she said the game affected her decision. So that, I mean, read between the lines, that only means that she's now more considering coming back.
Absolutely. 100%. Nick is praying for me. I appreciate you, Nick. Thanks for tapping in, and to everyone else who's tapping in, we appreciate you. I think, and this is the last thing I'll say about changing the system. I think if with MiLaysia Fulwiley potentially being, not even potentially, I mean, at this point, she's the best player on the team. If you're going to be the best player on the team, you have to play through the best player on your team. And I would be really interested to see what a MiLaysia Fulwiley, Ta'Niya Latson backcourt looks like. I think it'd be super effective. And that would likely also bring back Raven Johnson. We know that there's a connection there. And I told you that Raven Johnson this time last year was our best perimeter defender. And I believe that if Raven Johnson gets to play her final year in college with a friend, a childhood friend, in Ta'Niya Latson, maybe she'll be more motivated to go out there and get back to being the best perimeter defender on the team. But my biggest takeaway from Sunday is this has to change. We're done with unless you can get a 6'7" recruit to recruit to South Carolina or to commit to South Carolina, and then you go back to that, that's fine. But if that's not what's happening, and you have the players that you have on this roster, Joyce Edwards and MiLaysia, we got to change it up a bit. I don't want to keep seeing Chloe Kitts playing iso ball on the wing. I don't want to see that anymore. I need something different. I need more. I respect, I appreciate Chloe Kitts, but I don't want to have any more stretches of a basketball season where Chloe Kitts is our best player. That's not going to result in winning a championship. No offense to Chloe Kitts, but that's just not. That's just not.
Yeah, and she's made great strides. Like she
Absolutely.
got so much better. Like at times where she did start to look like their best player, it was impressive, and they needed
Yes.
that from her. They needed different people to step up and look like their best player at times. Um, so go, going off of the changing the system thing, it's not just MiLaysia, it's Joyce too, bro.
Hmm.
You got to think about it. Like I heard Raven had said something I saw after the game. They were asking her about Joyce like being hard on herself. And Raven said that they speak life into her. They remind her that the great bigs of the past that came before her, Camilla, Aaliyah, Asia, they all went through it. Joyce is different from all of them, bro. Joyce right now is more of a point forward. She's not a seal big. She's not sealing you. She's not back to the basket big. She is a hybrid post. She is not your typical post player, and she's 6'1" or 6. She's like 6 foot is 6'1". She's not
Yep.
6'3" or 6'4". She's an undersized big and forward. She's super versatile. Like you see how the kind of stuff she was doing. They had her bringing the ball up top,
Yep.
going off the dribble. Like
Yeah.
she could go ISO on the wing eventually. She's gonna get really good.
Makes me smile.
Her and MiLaysia are very unique talents. And so I'm agreeing with you. Like, it's not just MiLaysia. I think Dawn has to look at her two best players now going forward, MiLaysia and Joyce. They are dynamic players
Yeah.
who might need a little more of a dynamic, free flowing system to really highlight what they can do. And I think it will be interesting going forward to see um the roster construction and the play style
Yeah.
with like because Joyce is very unique, man. She's very dynamic. She's not just your typical post player. And you say the same about my not your typical guard. Um, I think the Ta'Niya Latson thing is interesting. I don't think that would, and I'm glad that you pointed out. I didn't know she's childhood friends with Raven, so maybe that would be a factor for Raven to want to come back. But I think, like, as much as I love I have loved the depth chart of South Carolina. They've got it's 4 or 5 guards. They've got 4 or 5 posts. Everybody can play. Everybody can contribute. Different leading scorer in every game in the NCAA tournament. They have the gamut of guards, they have the gamut of posts, right? And that's cool, but maybe it's time to like more lean into like a specific backcourt. If they were to get a Ta'Niya Latson, I want to see MiLaysia and Ta'Niya Latson. I mean, Raven Johnson could contribute, but I don't think that would be smart on her part to come back if Ta'Niya Latson is going. Like that takes away from her being she might have to fight for starter minutes. I mean, Dawn might give it to her off respect, but like MiLaysia and Ta'Niya should be the starting backcourt if Ta'Niya Latson is there. Raven
Yeah.
Johnson should be coming off the bench.
I agree.
That may not be great for her stock, so to speak. So I having that combination of, and Tessa Johnson's still there. Like,
Yeah.
so where is Raven going to find minutes if you've got those kind of players on the
Yeah.
roster? So I don't know about that. But I know that would be a big splash that South Carolina could use to go from a Raven Johnson to a Ta'Niya Latson. That makes you way more of an offensive team. So again, they're going to be in that portal. I don't know if they're going to swing for like a big name or a big scorer like that. I get the sense they're going to go for like just good players that are experienced that fit their system and their model. But yeah, we'll see if Dawn agrees with you, man. We'll see. I tend to think 5 straight years in the Final Four can make you a little
Bro,
rightfully stubborn.
the Buffalo Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls in the 90s. They lost all of them. Like, again, I get it, right? 5 straight Final Fours. You go to national championship 3 times, you win 2 of them. I'm not trying to sound ungrateful. But what I'm also acknowledging is when you look across the landscape, as you alluded to, players aren't just, yep, UConn, yep, South Carolina. Like, that's not what's happening. Like, players are choosing to go to other programs across the country for various reasons. And so the talent is being dispersed. we all give Dawn credit for the fact that really before she got there, South Carolina, the big thing that South Carolina wasn't able to do was keep their own players. They've done that a lot now since she's been there, right? So you don't have to worry about that component of it. And we acknowledge and we appreciate and we love that about Dawn. But this isn't working. Like it's not working. It's not. And when I mean it's not working, I'm not saying it's not resulting in winning, because it's resulting in winning. But when I think about working, I think about, if I look at this basketball team and I'm watching them, whether it's at the beginning of the season, the middle of the season, the conference tournament, or March Madness, do they look effective? Do they look like what do the players they have? You and I used to joke about this all the time in our previous existence, right? KYP, know your personnel. Does the personnel that you have on your roster, is that going to be conducive to make this system run effectively? And the answer right now is no, it's not. The players we have on this roster right now are not conducive for a deep seal, feed the post, crash the boards hard type of style of offense. It's not. I think the defense, as the comments alluded to earlier, I think the defense has never really been much of a concern this season. It's been the offense. And when you have a player in MiLaysia Fulwiley, when you have a player in Joyce Edwards, even a player like Tessa Johnson, who I forgot, but I didn't even think about, right? And how she factors into all of this, right? Like, you have to play to their strengths. You have to. We've seen Joyce Edwards take over basketball games and win us games just off the strength of how good she is and what she's able to do already as a freshman. We've seen now in 2 years of MiLaysia Fulwiley her do the same thing. She was the MVP of the SEC tournament last season. Like, we've seen how good she can be when you release those restrictions. So, like, at some point, a decision has to be made. Either we are going to choose to adapt just a little bit and tweak our philosophy just a little bit, because the goal is still to hang banners in South Carolina, or we're just going to do what we've been doing all this time, and we're only going to recruit players and only going to go after players that are going to fit that. And if that's the decision, that's fine. But you are then sacrificing and putting a cap on the potential of Joyce Edwards and MiLaysia Fulwiley. If the decision is just going to be, we're just going to play a feed the post offense and we're just going to go out there and get some bigs, because MiLaysia and Joyce bring more to the table than just overhead passes or bounce passes into the post, letting the big get busy and then running back on defense. They're more than that. They deserve the opportunity to showcase just how good they are outside of on the fast break. It should be more than that. So I think the system should be changed. I'm not saying it needs to be a makeover, but it needs to the system for next season. And as long as MiLaysia and Joyce are on the roster, needs to be a system that is conducive to playing to their strengths so that they can be the best versions of themselves. Because the two of them at their best, surrounded by players who complement them well, can win South Carolina more national championships in the next 2 years than a system where we're just going to stick with what we know that's been working for the last 10 years and kind of try to force a square peg into a round hole for the both of them and just make them adapt their game to that. I just, again, I don't want to sound like I'm questioning the great Dawn Staley, and I'm certainly not, but just as a fan, as a sports person teams go through this all the time. You win championships, the system's great, and then you have a championship performance like Sunday where you just get outplayed on both sides, and you have to make an adjustment.
Like something has to change.
It is incumbent on them to make an adjustment. It doesn't need to be drastic, but an adjustment needs to be made to prevent something like that from happening again.
I think that's only fair. I mean, even as a coach, like, even when you win, you'll hear coaches after a win and they're like, hey, we're on the road next week. We got to recruit. Right. Like, even if you win, you're thinking about how do we improve for next year? Like that's your job as the coach. I think shooting, and I know I'm an offense guy, and I scored a lot of points in my career and I believe in shooting, but and so it's something that I noticed, and it stood out to me in the first game against UConn. I'm like, girls on this side can shoot. AZ Fudd comes out, hits a few threes, bang, bang. Pow. I think the addition of Pow these last 2 years was really telling. I think last year when I saw, I'm like, wait, they got the girl from Oregon, Pow, 3-point shooter. and they had Camilla. I'm like, man, that roster's too deep. And they go undefeated. Pow as that 3-point specialist was such a perfect insertion into what they had last year, and I think that's one of the interesting things I'm going to be watching for to see what kind of players they go after and add. Is I think they could use some more shooting. Like I think their identity as a team, even if they don't just turn into it doesn't mean they have to shoot over 25 threes a game. I'm not saying they got to go straight Mike D'Antoni style and just start playing fast and shooting threes, but just a little bit more. It could be a little tweak that happens in terms of the kind of even with their bigs, like look for forwards who can shoot. Like, look for forwards who can shoot. When the game started out like 11-10 and they were going back and forth and they were kind of exchanging buckets, there were like 2 or 3 possessions where like Chloe Kitts hit a jump shot. I think Ta'Niya Fagan hit one. Yeah. And it was like, oh, snap. Like everyone's in rhythm. People are hitting shots, but that is not them. Like Sarah Strong outplayed all their post players.
Absolutely.
She hit a couple threes. She scores inside. She scores outside. She's in the mid post doing handoffs, pick and pop. Like the amount of things you can do with a player like Sarah Strong, mainly because of her shooting ability. It starts with that. She can do other things. She can go off the bounce, but like when she up fakes you at the 3-point line, you've got to honor it because she can shoot that thing. So that's where I look forward to seeing if there's an adjustment with Dawn in the roster and the kind of players they go after. I just think shooting, and like you look at, started by talking about Pow, she's like an outlier on that team. She's like the one, like Bree Hall can hit 3. She's a good shooter, but I feel like her role is more defined as like, you said Raven was their best perimeter defender last year. I would split it between Raven and Bree Hall, like depending on who the matchup is. I think they both have shared that title and that role. You saw Bree Hall was the main matchup on Paige yesterday. So, again, depends on the matchup, but like Bree Hall can shoot the ball too, man. And I feel like you don't really get to see that because of the system. And so, yeah, I think Pow became such the 3-point specialist, leads the country in threes, lead the country in 3-point percentage. Yeah, but they ran the first play for her, stagger screen for Pow off the top. She scored the first bucket, hit a 3. Yep. Right. And then throughout the game, there are times when the guards got to make plays off the bounce. That is not Pow. She's not the type to hit you off side to side and make something happen off the bounce. She can, but she's more of the 3-point specialist. But this is not a 3-point specialist team. And so last year it worked perfectly. This year, I think they maybe could have started leaning into that a little bit more this year. I was looking at some numbers from past games this season. They had games where they took over 23s. They shot 10 for 28 from 3 against Oklahoma this year in January, smacked them by 30 or 40 or something. There were games when they got into that kind of rhythm. I just don't think that is baked into their natural identity. And when you go up against, again, I just think UConn, there are probably other teams. South Carolina probably would have beaten UCLA. They obviously, they beat Texas. Like I told you not to even worry about that game. They're going to take care of them. USC with Juju probably would have beaten them too.
I don't know, man.
It would have been tough. That would have been tough. But Juju would have had to play outstanding, to outlast them, because they don't. The USC, I've talked about, like, they have good players, but they don't have a 2-3. They don't have a big 2 or big 3 like that really puts that much pressure on you offensively. I think that would have been a really good game, but I just think UConn was the unique Achilles heel for this South Carolina team that did struggle offensively a lot this year, and relied more on their defense. They could score, but against a team that can really score with individual special talents in a system that works for them, that was the ultimate Achilles heel for this South Carolina team.
Yeah, again, last thing I'll say is, to your point about Ta'Niya, when she hit that first 3, my ears perked. I got like excited like a dog. Like my ears perked up. I was like, oh, like that's
but I was more encouraged after the next few possessions when, again, Chloe Kitts hit a long 2 jump shot.
Yeah.
I think Bree Hall hit a 3. I think like their first 5 or 6 possessions, the score was
were
like
very effective.
They were going back and forth, and different players were scoring. So I'm like, okay, that's good for them, because Everyone's getting a little touch. Everyone's getting a little rhythm.
Yep.
But yeah, it's tough, man. When you have that kind of depth and everybody contributes, it's like either everyone's in rhythm or no one is, or even or one person is, or only two people are, and then it's on you to get it to those people, like go through those people, like, and it got really tough for them, not really knowing who to go to, who's our bucket getter, who can bail us out. Like, you need bailout players on your team that can just go and get a bucket. MiLaysia's the only one, in my opinion, who is really like that. Joyce has proven to kind of be like that. She can bail them out offensively, but and now, and we're talking about changing the system. We're not saying a bailout offense, but it's just, there's a shot clock.
There needs to be some tweaks.
You
just
need,
some minor
to have a couple people who can just go get a bucket.
Yeah, there needs to be some minor adjustments. Like, let's go. I think finding a player, not to quote unquote place Ta'Niya, but finding someone else who can be that 3-point specialist would be helpful. Like, finding other players who can do some of those things. Again, not to exactly mimic what we saw 2 years ago when they won, or last season when they won the national championship, but there needs to be some minor adjustments, finding players who can better complement Joyce and MiLaysia. Right, there are players on the roster who can currently do that, but there might be, whether it's Ta'Niya Latson, whether it's some other player in the transfer portal, there's likely another player or two or three, who knows, that can come in and still help mold this team, and the identity can be adjusted.
Last quick thought, and this is a stretch and a reach a little bit, I think, but even as people were discussing like South Carolina transfers, who's in the portal, Ta'Niya Latson, what if Olivia Miles were to consider South Carolina and Dawn Staley? Or maybe more importantly, what if South Carolina was to consider Olivia Miles? That, Marcus, would have to mean changing the system, because Olivia Miles is an up and down transition, push the ball point guard. She can be great in the half court too, running your offense. But when you get a point guard like Olivia Miles, you're committing to up and down, push the pace basketball. So that, I mean, I wouldn't predict that, but if that were on the table, that would suggest that Dawn is open to changing things up a bit.
Let me say this. Let's say this is perfectly clear. If I open Twitter, or you text me and say Olivia Miles is a South Carolina Gamecock, I'm gonna go find me some real estate in South Carolina. I'm gonna go live in South Carolina for the duration of the next college season. Right. I'll tell you that much.